This video is the second and final part of a series where I, as a self-proclaimed Star Trek mega fan and expert, explain to people wanting to get into this somewhat complicated franchise where to start and what order to view each series in. With that being said, I recommend looking at my first video discussing classic Star Trek in the description, or by clicking on something hopefully on screen right now, and watching that if you haven't already. Because, as you'll see in this video, most of the modern series build off the classics, and in general, I recommend from experience watching those first. If you choose to ignore that suggestion, or are joining me from that video, if you're watching this around the mid to late 2020s, you might want to check the description, comments, or something on screen right now, as this video is discussing modern Trek, it will eventually become outdated. As I write this, the Star Trek franchise is planned out until 2027, with a new Star Trek every week, and they have no intention of stopping then. Currently, there are 3 seasons of Discovery, 10 short treks across 2 seasons, 3 movies in the Kelvin Timeline, and a season each of Picard and Lower Decks. However, we also have enough info to discuss and speculate on Prodigy, Strange New Worlds, and what is still called Untitled Section 31 show, and figure out what is required for those shows with what should be a high degree of accuracy. Any small correction I can fix in the description or comments, however, for a major change like a new show, the plan is to eventually make a new video when this one becomes too outdated. Now that that's all settled, we can begin. Unlike the classic series, modern Star Trek doesn't really have a set A to B to C viewing order. This appears to be changing somewhat as the writers use Discovery to set up new shows more and more, but for the most part I will go over each series by release order of its first season and tell you what you need to fully understand that series so far. Again, in general, I recommend having seen all the classic series, the original series, the animated series, the Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and Enterprise, and their movies. However, I will highlight specifically when any one series is particularly important for those who simply cannot wait to catch up.
Bum, 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 bum.
Until now, we have focused on one of Star Trek's 3 main universes. Every other show, past, present, and future, takes place in what's called the Prime Timeline. Those shows also occasionally venture into the Mirror Universe, but it's not necessary to discuss and is already accounted for in these recommendations. However, the last 3 movies, possibly 4 by the time you watch this, take place in what's called the Kelvin Timeline, or JJ-verse. The reason for the former should be obvious when you watch the first movie, and the latter is a reference to J.J. Abrams, who directed the first 2 films. 2009's Star Trek, or Star Trek 2009 as it's commonly referred to, was an attempt to reboot the dead Star Trek franchise for modern audiences. Therefore, it was decided to set this movie in a new alternate timeline, which is why what I'm about to say is going to sound weird. Even though these movies take place between the years of Discovery and TOS in an alternate universe, it makes the most sense to consider them taking place during 2387 of the Prime Timeline, between Lower Decks and Picard. Without giving spoilers, you're just gonna kinda have to trust me, but generically, the reason is that the events of that film do include a significant event in the Prime Timeline that happens at that date. While you could simply have this be your first Star Trek, the feel of it is somewhere between classic and new, and it's a natural transition point between the two, which is why I recommend watching this movie, Into Darkness, then Beyond, after classic Trek. Additionally, without spoilers as to why, TOS, TAS, and its movies, and TNG would provide additional context to the film and one of its characters, and avoid retroactive spoilers if you were to watch this trilogy first.
Do, 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 do.
Alex Kurtzman, the current head of the Star Trek franchise, has built each series to fill a role or a genre, which is the easiest way to think of each series. 2016's Star Trek Discovery starts in the year 2250, 10 years before TOS and 95 years after Enterprise. It is intended to be the flagship series, as TNG and Voyager were back in the day. It is the main Star Trek series, which is used for both setup of other shows and the jumping on point for new fans. As such, there's no major requirement to have seen another Star Trek from the start. However, again, trying not to spoil anything, There is a major change in the third season, which does make older shows more important. Specifically, Enterprise and Deep Space Nine would both add context to different parts of the second season, while the TNG plotline is continued to the point of an episode in question having Part 3 in its title in Season 3. While none are strictly speaking necessary, it's likely Discovery will build on more and more classic Trek as the series goes on. However, as things currently stand, Discovery requires no other main Trek to understand completely, beyond the recommendation of the Kelvin movies to get used to the tonal shift. Despite this, though, there are more and more references being made to the classic Trek in the universe as the whole, and that will continue as time goes on. Therefore, again, the recommendation is classics before modern. Finally, wait for the section on the short treks in this video before starting this show. Also, on a more personal note, I think Discovery's first season is awful, and its second season would be literally unwatchable if it weren't for Pike barely making it watchable. However, its third season is a huge step up and shows great promise for future seasons. It would likely be confusing to jump straight into it though, as every character is in the middle of their own personal arc, at least the characters that matter. As such, if you can't get into Discovery, then I suggest skipping it and coming back after you're more used to the darker tones of modern Trek, or get some poor, unfortunate soul to drag through the first 2 seasons and criticize with. Your choice. Do 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 do. That model won't arrive for a few more weeks. Paramount Plus recently released an ad where Alex Kurtzman himself described Star Trek Picard as, and I quote, Star Trek's first adult drama. Taking place in the year 2399, this decent 2-hour movie somebody decided to make a 10-part series acts as a sequel to Nemesis, directly dealing with the events of that movie. It also directly deals with the aforementioned event in the Kelvin movies which affected the Prime Universe. As such, The Next Generation, its movies, and Star Trek 2009 are all required reading. Perhaps surprising for a show about TNG's captain, Star Trek Voyager is an essential piece of understanding Picard as well, and watching Picard first will have retroactive spoilers for everything I've just listed. However, the show does serve as another entry point into modern Trek, requiring no other modern show to understand. Again though, wait for this video's section on short treks before diving in. Ba 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 ba. Borrowing its name from the TNG episode of a similar setup, Lower Decks is a workplace comedy about the ensigns of the USS Cerritos, created by Mike McMahon. The show, not the USS Cerritos. Although I guess technically Mike McMahon did create the USS Cerritos, but never mind. Mike McMahon is a Trekkie living the ultimate dream of being given their own show. McMahon has sold Lower Decks under the premise of, what if a Next Generation B plot was this show's A plot and vice versa? Lower Decks directly continues the 24th century block taking place the year after Nemesis, and is somehow a Star Trek from the 1990s in the best way possible that escaped to today. It's incredibly self-referential and made for old fans, so while I've heard of people who have never seen another Trek loving it, I literally cannot understand how. All of classic Trek is required reading, though don't worry if you skipped a show or two, and the series could result in retroactive spoilers for everything. It's a great entry point for modern Trek for those who don't yet want to leave the classics, as to this point it has never referenced a modern series beyond an occasional background visual reference. There's also still a slight recommendation to have seen the Kelvin Timelines first for some real meta jokes in one episode, but it's not exactly required. Genuinely funny, and the new Star Trek theme I always have in my head, Lower Decks gets a 10 out of 10 from me. Star Trek Short Treks is an interesting one. Consisting of 10 brief shorts set in the Star Trek universe, it's home to more aesthetically experimental shorts. Yet some of these shorts are required reading for different series, to the point where you'll not know what's happening if you skip them, as happened to me with Discovery's second season. The simplest way to watch them is as follows. The short trek, Children of Mars, serves as Star Trek Picard Episode 0. It should be watched immediately before starting that series, and will have the largest impact on you then. It also provides additional context for Star Trek Picard, and watching it the other way around, as unfortunately I did originally, takes away from both. I can only speak for the released 2 seasons, however, for those remaining 9 shorts they tie into either Discovery or Strange New Worlds. As Discovery is required reading for Strange New Worlds, the simplest way to watch them is as they were released, which looks like this. First, watch Discovery's first season in its entirety. Then watch the first season of Short Treks. This includes Runaway, Calypso, although note that given the events of later seasons, this may or may not still be canon. It's currently unclear. The Brightest Star, and The Escape Artist. After that, watch Discovery's second season in its entirety, and finally watch the remaining short treks of Q&A, The Trouble with Edward, Ask Not, Ephraim and Dot, and The Girl Who Made the Stars. If you're curious when any of these shorts actually take place, the Star Trek Chronology Project mentioned in the last video and linked in the description does its best to place them, though most of these are inherently undateable.
Wee wah, wee wah, wee wah. Those were the Time Police, in case you don't know.
That is the entirety of released Star Trek to this date, went much faster than the classics. However, we currently know of 3 additional shows in development, and we know enough about these shows to at least roughly know when they take place, and at least some of the other shows you will need to understand them. Well, I suppose I deserve it, finishing this video before the first Contact Day announcements and all. This is Future Nathan, already amending this section of the video with new info, so let's see how old me did last week. First, likely to be the next show released in the franchise. Wrong. Star Trek Prodigy is the franchise's first kids show made for Nickelodeon, and if that just put you off, you clearly haven't seen a good kids show in a decade or so. Many modern kids shows, such as Steven Universe or She-Ra, are dealing with incredibly adult topics and are not talking down to their audience at all. And from what we know about Prodigy and its writing team, it looks like this could be another one of those shows. Following a group of, quote, lawless teenage characters finding a derelict Starfleet ship which they use to search for adventure, meaning, and salvation. From what we know of this show, it features an all-alien cast of new races, except maybe that one. Ah yes, this is correct. That guy is a Talaxian, because this show takes place in the Delta Quadrant in the year 2383. So half points on my fan theory there. 3 years after Lower Deck's first season, which now has a confirmed season 3, and 16 years before Picard. We also know that Voyager's Captain Janeway makes an appearance, but is the ship's, quote, training hologram. Given this show's place in the timeline, it's actually unclear whether or not Starfleet would have been aware of Voyager's fate when such a hologram was built and installed in the still unknown Prodigy ship, and so whether or not Voyager may be required reading. This is something I'll simply have to clarify in the comments or description in the future. However, for now, know it's incredibly likely there will be Voyager references in the show, given its setting and the fact the races of the Delta Quadrant, especially that Talaxian, could very likely be aware of Voyager and its actions.
Do 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 do. I kind of have to guess on the theme songs for these ones.
The original series, Strange New Worlds, or SNW, follows the crew of the Enterprise before Captain Kirk took over. Starring Captain Pike, Spock, and Number 1, this show will reportedly follow a classic episodic and Monster of the Week style of storytelling, with modern serialization applied to the character development only. Now, they told us Picard was going to be a philosophical character study, but if they aren't lying about Strange New Worlds, then that's a recipe for success that's catering towards the classic fans who have been unhappy with what is seen as an over-serialization of the franchise. As a prequel, it's unlikely the original series will be required for Strange New Worlds. However, Discovery's second season definitely will be. It's unclear exactly how much they will reference the events of that season, although my opinion is that it will be the primary character motivation of at least one lead. Furthermore, it's incredibly likely Season 1 of Strange New Worlds will take place the year after that season of Discovery, similar to how The Next Generation and Voyager work. Additionally, it may be fun to treat the original series episode The Cage as an episode 0. Beyond that, due to its place in the timeline, the only other series which may be required reading is Enterprise, but we have nothing to suggest that so far.
It's a good thing Eagle Moss randomly sent me a Section 31 ship this month.
Rather fittingly, Untitled Section 31 series, genuinely think they should keep that name, is the show we know the least about. Probably the dark spy thriller everybody is dreading. What we know of the plot and casting constitutes Discovery spoilers and is henceforth appropriately redacted from this video. However, from what we do know, Discovery will be required reading through to its 3rd season, and it's not unlikely that there will be eventual crossover with Strange New Worlds. Furthermore, Deep Space Nine and Enterprise may add context to this show, but probably not much else. Oh, and if you're wondering what exactly Section 31 is, it's a reason I'm avoiding spoilers. Also, that's kind of the whole point of Section 31 when you think about it.
It's been a long road.
And now you've done it. 801 installments, 3 main universes, and over a consecutive 26 days of content, all done. You are now set to enjoy new Star Treks with the rest of us as they come out, learn to love that one random person on Reddit who posts the references for every new episode the day after they come out, and fully engage with the world of Star Trek. If you missed my first video, which is just this but for the classic series, that should be on screen now. And don't forget to check the comments and description for any potential amendments to this video. Now, all we have to do is see how long it takes until this video becomes out of date and I have to make another one of these.